This conference will now be recorded.
Hey, so good morning again, everyone. Thank you for coming to the November Chamber HR Council, sponsored by Frontline HR Solutions. And this is the final Chamber HR Council we'll have of the year. We are lucky enough to have Mike Perkins, the president of Frontline HR, here with us today. And then we also have Rodney Atkins, our presenter, who is from Progress Rail, come to speak on some tips on evaluations and performance reviews. So Mike, if you want to, you can take it away and introduce yourself and introduce Rodney.
Great, thanks, Will. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Hey, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity and Frontline HR Solutions the opportunity to sponsor the HR Council meetings this year, and I hope that these meetings have been worthwhile for those that have had the opportunity to attend. We're excited to be able to partner with the Chamber in that regard. I'm very happy to introduce my friend, Rodney Atkins from Progress Rail. Rodney has been in HR and has been in manufacturing for a long time. Actually, he's a lot older than he looks. I think he's been involved in manufacturing for 35 years plus with some excellent companies. And he's a great success story. Rodney started off as a welder, working in manufacturing, and attended college at night and worked his way up, attended college and got a degree in personnel psychology. That shows you how old he is, because back then it was called personnel back in the day. Now it's human resource management. But anyway, Rodney's been involved in HR in various aspects, broad range of HR. I've been a professional in HR for 28 years now. He's currently the Director of Talent Management at Progress Rail, and I was fortunate to have been involved in the interview process for that position, which was a new position in Progress Rail. We needed someone to take the company to the next level in developing employee performance management from start to the entire life cycle, from the time someone came aboard until the day they retired. And Rodney was a perfect fit for that job and a perfect pick. And since that time, he's been leading the effort to revise and improve the entire employee management life cycle at Progress Rail. And so anyway, without further ado, I'll introduce Rodney, and he can talk to you about a critical part of that performance management process. So Rodney, take it away. Thank you for being with us today.
All right. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. And regardless of what Mike says about my age, I am much younger than he is. So I appreciate that introduction, Mike, and want to thank Will Mackey for taking care of me and getting me here and taking care of all the technical things and getting everything set up for me. So today is really going to just talk about performance evaluations, and I'm going to put a lot of emphasis on the power of feedback. So that feedback is applicable throughout the evaluation period, not just at review time. So when you think about feedback as we go through out this presentation. Just think about feedback and how effective it can be, not just at evaluation time. And clicker. Okay, all right. Thank you, Will. All right, so I know Mike gave a quick introduction, and this is just a real short bio, and I kind of tell my story a little bit about being a welder and putting myself through school, just so I have a little street credit when I talk to people in manufacturing, and because I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I had to work my way through school, and I've always worked full time since I was 18 years old. So and so Mike's already told you all this, and most of my experience is in HR. Of that 35 years, and most of it's been in operations. So and with that, working in operations, you really get exposed to all aspects of human resources. So today, I want to talk about performance evaluations And when I do supervisor training, I really emphasize there's 2 areas that you're going to be evaluating people on, okay? And that is it. It is performance and behavior. So we're going to emphasize that today. And then we're going to break down, the SMART goals. We're going to talk about what SMART goals are. We're going to talk about the difference between goals and activities, the importance of measuring those goals, and then how we track the progress and the value of that. And then the second part of any performance evaluation, at least ones that I've been have used in the past, you got to have competencies and you got to have behaviors that you're evaluating people on. And then we're going to talk about a goal alignment. So the value of aligning goals from your top executives all the way down to the guys on the floor. And then positive, negative feedback is what I'm going to end on today. Again, I've mentioned I'm going to emphasize feedback quite a bit, and I want to talk about feedback and then and how important it is to be specific when you're providing that feedback. All right, so when you think about the challenges, and I don't know if I can hear anybody give feedback, but what are some of your challenges that you face with performance assessments or reviews?
And if you guys would like to put those in the chat right now, you're more than welcome to.
Now you can see on the screen, these are a lot of the ones that I thought of. So many times, and no matter where I've worked, it's not enough time. Ill-trained supervisors and managers, they just do a poor job of them. Not everyone, but some do. Or you don't have a good system. It's not automated. You're still doing a paper evaluation. Maybe job roles are not well defined. The expectations are not clearly defined. Or you just have a lack of goals or no goals at all. And then sometimes I've seen managers that are just reluctant to do them. They're not comfortable doing them. And it's very common, at least with the organizations I've worked with. And then simply some just aren't very good at giving performance evaluations because they're having to sit down with that person and talk about that person and give them that specific feedback, so they might have to tell them something that they don't want to hear. And unfortunately, I think a lot of leaders, they're not even good at giving positive feedback, let alone the negative feedback. So these are just some of the things that I thought of and have experienced and ran across with a lot of leaders who have to do performance evaluations. Now I send daily devotionals to my daughters and my family every day, and I sent one, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, and the devotional was, if you're serious about changing your life, you will find a way. If you're not serious, you'll find excuses. And that really resonated with me, and it really resonated with my daughters, and they really liked it. But that's really applicable in a lot of things in our life. If we want to lose weight, we'll get serious about it, and then we're going to do something about it. We'll find a way. But if we don't lose weight, we just come up with excuses. And I've been having lots of excuses on not losing weight over the last 10 years because I like food. So, but here, if we have an issue with performance assessments, people saying they don't have time or they're just not good, I encourage you to stop using excuses or allowing people to use excuses on why performance assessments are not done appropriately. Your employees and people deserve it. They deserve a good performance evaluation. They deserve that feedback. And if you do it well, it's extremely effective in developing people. It's extremely effective in heightening someone's performance. So I shared this cartoon with you, and this says a lot to me. When I saw this cartoon, I thought I've got to share that in this presentation. And I cannot tell you, how many times that I've heard people that I've worked with that are frustrated and the review that they got back from their manager. I've actually seen it at my current employer. I saw a paper, I actually printed a performance assessment out, and the manager had put one comment in the entire performance assessment for that employee. And so that employee sat down with me and shared that concern with me. You know, my manager only had one thing to say in my performance review. So, you know, and I've had, I can't tell you, probably 75, 85% of my reviews that I've received in my career have been via email. And, you know, while I don't need that, you know, warm and fuzzy, hey, you're doing a great job, it is nice, you know, that the times where I have actually got to sit down with my manager and get that feedback, it's really nice, especially when they point out the specific things that I did throughout that review cycle that I worked on hard, and they recognize it. It really is powerful to get that feedback. But I'm also the kind of individual too, I like to get the negative feedback because I don't like to fail. I don't like to disappoint. I'm kind of a service oriented kind of person. So I like for people to think well of me. So I like getting the negative feedback so that I can do better. So, and I can't tell you how many times, you know, people have said, you know, sat down and went through my review with my manager, and it was like, you know, just a couple of minutes. And, you know, 2 thumbs up, hey, you're doing a great job. Well, at what? What am I doing a great job at? Okay. But this really says a lot about poor managers or poor leaders who just give poor feedback, poor evaluations. All right, so as you saw on the agenda, there's 2 things that I really want to emphasize here on areas that people are evaluated on. So as a manager of people, 2 things you're going to have to worry about, and that's their performance and their behavior. Okay, so we got to have people to perform. Okay, if they're not performing at the level that you expect, then you're probably not going to keep them in your organization. Or if they're not behaving in the way that they need to behave and meeting the expectations of your behavior of your company, then you're probably not going to keep them either. So they're equally important. Now, I have often seen in my career where someone's really good at performing, but their behavior is not the best. They're not the best team player. They're a little abrasive. And I've seen companies tolerate the poor behavior because their performance was really good. Now, you got to really think about, okay, what's the effects of that? It really, if you have someone in your organization and the behaviors are not addressed, the behavior of one individual can really create a morale problem in your organization, especially if it's a boss or a leader. It can lead to turnover issues. It can lead to relationship issues, and ultimately, it's going to result in poor performance of other team members and other players. So, what are some ways that you measure now? And I know it's a little hard with the way our setup here, but feel free to chat or unmute. But how do you measure performance now? If someone wants to share, that's great. And then how do you measure your behavior now? Do you have a review system where you have competencies or behaviors that you evaluate people on? So what I want to share with you today is SMART goals, and I'm going to define that and expound upon that in the coming slides. And then we're going to wrap up with talking about some competencies and behaviors. All right, so SMART goals. Now, SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So when you set goals for an individual or yourself, you got to be specific. Okay, what exactly are you trying to accomplish? So is the goal measurable? Okay, so you've got to be able to provide concrete evidence. You know, you're moving it from X to X or X to Y or whatever. So you got to be able to measure it, and then you've got to be able to attain it. So when we set goals, our goals are meant to stretch us to be better than we were, but they're not meant to break us. Okay, so you've got to set your goals that are attainable, but they do stretch us. And then relevant, are your goals relevant to the organizational strategy, the organizational goals, So you got to make sure that your goals as an individual is relevant to your department goals, to the team goals, to the division goals, and then ultimately your corporate or your top leadership goals. And then time bound is you got to have a date. When are you going to have that goal achieved by? Okay, so it gives us that appropriate sense of urgency, and it holds us accountable. So if you don't have a date or a time frame, it's not time bound, then it's not, it doesn't carry that urgency that you need. So when you're writing a SMART goal, your SMART goal has to contain a verb, it's got to contain a result, and it's got to contain a measure. So let's just cover the first one there at the top. So you're going to increase sales by 15%. So that's what you want to achieve, is you want to improve sales by 15%. And the measure is from, let's say, 1 million in sales in 2019, you're going to increase it to 1,150,000 in 2020. And you're going to do it by 12/31/2020. So that would be a complete SMART goal. It's very specific, it's measurable, okay, because you measure your sales through your organization, okay? It's attainable, it's relevant, and it's time bound with 12/31/2020. And you can see the other examples there as well. So the difference between a goal and activity. Now, when I started working with SMART goals, I don't know, some 15 years ago or 20 years ago, a lot of people would write down activities as their goal. So you got to be real careful if you're working with SMART goals or you're thinking about introducing SMART goals in your organization. The goal is to increase sales by 15%. The activities are the things that you're going to do to get that, to achieve that 15%. So you're going to implement a new program of some sort, a new tracking system. You're going to make an extra 15 phone calls a week to get sales up. Those are your activities. That's not what you're measuring, okay? Now, you got to have a plan for those things, but your goal is to increase sales by 15%, as we saw in the previous example. All right, so is this SMART goal or not? And I've already given you the answer on here, but if you read these, what makes 1 and 4 SMART goals? Okay, remember what SMART stands for: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. So number 1 here is you've increased sales from 1.2 million to 1.6 million by the end of December 2020. So is that a SMART goal? Yes, it is, because it is specific, it is measurable, it is attainable. I guess based on, you know, your organization is an increase of 0.4 million achievable, and then it's time bound by the end of December. Okay, so as you can see from 2, 3, and 5, they lack some details. They lack some specifics. They're not measurable because there's nothing there to measure. Number 3 is close to being considered a SMART goal, but it's not time bound. Are you going to do that in the first quarter? Are you going to do that by mid-year? Are you going to do that by the end of the year? When are you going to achieve that? Okay. And then number 4 would be considered a SMART goal or an effective goal because it does contain everything that is SMART. And then the last one obviously lacks details, you know, reducing quality by, you know, how many, what, okay? So lack some details there. So measuring goals, this is a very important piece of measuring of SMART goals. So measuring is through the quantity, it's through the quality, it's through the cost, it's through the timeliness of when you're going to achieve these goals. Now, I heard a manager of mine, probably, I don't know, somewhere in the middle of my career, said to me, what gets measured gets done. And that's the important thing about SMART goals, is that you are measuring. It's, you know, the second part of SMART is the M, right? It's measurable. So being able to measure things is extremely important. And if your boss is not asking for something, you don't have to provide them with this information. You're probably not going to work on it a whole lot, right? But if you're a manager and you're working with people and you're asking for this information, you're asking for this update, you're asking for your goals to be updated, employees are going to respond, and they're going to be doing those things that you're measuring, that you're asking for. And specifically when you talk about performance evaluations, they're surely going to do it because they know you're measuring it, they know you're asking for it. So, so that phrase has stuck out in my career a lot, is what gets measured gets done. And I know for me personally, I find out what's important to my boss, whether it's my goals, my performance goals, or whatever it is, projects I'm working on. I'm going to make sure I get those things done because my boss is measuring them, right? So if it's important to us, we're going to measure it, and then we're going to hold people accountable. And the bottom sentence there, it's extremely important and vital, not only to the individual, but to the organization to measure performance. And I think it was John Maxwell, I think a quote of his that I picked up on 20-something years ago said, if they succeed, I succeed. So it's important for us as leaders to make sure that we're helping the folks that we're responsible for reach their goals. Because if they're reaching their goals, then I should be reaching mine, because their goals should support mine. My goals should support the organization, okay, and so forth. And we'll talk about that in a coming slide as far as goal alignment. So as far as goals recommendations, if you're at all thinking about SMART goals, implementing SMART goals in your organization, I recommend 3 to 5 goals. And one point I want to make here, it's important to not evaluate someone entirely on those 3 to 5 goals. The importance of 3 to 5 goals is you really want to just focus on, 3 to 5 strategic goals that's really going to help the organization be a success. Okay, so if I'm working on something, my goal should support my boss. My boss's goals should support the next person up the ladder. Okay, so when we think about doing performance evaluations, don't base it just on those 3 goals. Those goals are meant for everyone to have 3 to 5 strategic goals that they're really helping the business grow and succeed. Because we all know that we do a lot more than 3 to 5 goals in our jobs. Okay, we get called on to do an extra project, acquisitions happen, and we get called off to do this, or so there's just dozens and dozens of other things that we do. So when you do a performance evaluation, don't just focus on those 3 to 5 SMART goals. You got to consider the entire body of that person's performance and their behavior as well. So I added this in here. This is really just came from an Excel spreadsheet. So this is a format that I've used for years. We're not using this at my current company. We have used it in one of my past employers. And I like this spreadsheet because it puts everything in perspective. Now this is called a tracking chart, and as you can see on this tracking chart, this is your SMART goals, and what you put out here to the left, what's your objective? Okay, so we got safety and customer service and whatever else over here, but then we write our SMART goal. So, and I'll use the top one here as an example. So safety, your SMART goal is you want to reduce the recordable accident rate by 15% by the end of the calendar year 2020. Now, what's your jumping off point mean? That means what was 2019? So at the end of 2019, we had a recordable accident rate of, say, 1.67. So we want to reduce that by 15%. So now here's your plan. So probably not going to make a whole lot of impact by January or February, but you want to set your goal out here. So if you're reducing it by 15%, you put your goal here of 1.42%, and then you just kind of map out what you think how good you're going to improve it throughout the year. Now, a lot of you may say, well, how do you can control accidents? Well, you don't control accidents. Accidents happen, but it is a goal, and then the activities that you're doing throughout the year, as far as educating people, extra safety training, whatever it is to achieve that goal, that's what you're trying to change. You're changing that safety culture. You're doing those things to meet your goal. Again, it's a goal, and that's your plan here. And then at the end of each month, if you're used to calculating an injury rate at the end of each month, you just record it here. So if you do periodic reviews throughout the year with an individual, it's all right here in front of you, well documented, and you don't have to go back. When you get to review cycle at the end of the year, you're not going, okay, well, where's all the data for the last 12 months? Okay, so it's all right here. So it's again, you're tracking that performance, and then you're holding people accountable, and everything's measurable, it's attainable, it's relevant, and it's time bound. And I like this. I like this because if you're focusing on 3 to 5 objectives for the year, it packages it all right here. And when you're sitting down with your leader or your employee, you both have this document, and it's very easy to read. So I mentioned goal alignment a little bit ago, and years and years ago, before when I worked at Parker, we didn't have SMART goals, and before that, we had everybody just kind of set their goals. And in my division, we had 3 HR managers, and then we had my boss, who was a division manager. And all the HR managers would submit their goals for the year. And I noticed one year when I saw the other managers' goals, all of our goals were different. I had a goal that was specific to the facilities that I managed. And it really didn't support anything strategic. It didn't really support anything for the division. And this other HR manager at our Huntsville location, she had goals set. It just had nothing to do with my facility. So there was no strategy, there was no linking of our goals, and nothing strategic about our goals, other than maybe it was helping the people in our plants or whatever. But when we implemented SMART goals, it took us 3 or 4 years to get really good at it. But what it did is it helped us align our goals. So once we got the corporate strategy, we got the corporate level goals, of increasing sales, reducing work-related injuries, and et cetera, well, then the divisions or the business units could write their goals, and then the team could write their goals, and then the individuals can write their goals. So for example, if the corporate strategy, let's just say their on-time delivery of their widget product is, say this year it's 75%. Well, next year they set a goal that they want to raise that on-time delivery to, say, 90%. Okay, so what does this person down here on the line, what's their goal going to be? Okay, what's their contribution? So maybe their cycle time on a particular part is, it takes them 2.5 minutes to do that product. So maybe their goal is to reduce that 2.5 minutes to 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. Okay, so every person's part feeds up to meet the goals, and that's what I like about goal alignment. Is once you know what the corporate goal is, what the corporate strategy is, whether it's trying to improve your on-time delivery or whatever it may be, it's easy for these people to figure out, okay, what do I need to do as an individual that's going to support the overall corporate strategy. Now this chart, I've kept this for years too, and I think this is really a pretty good graphic that really kind of educates your organization on where should you be spending your time. So looking at this, your top management should be focused on business strategy. So about 90%, they should be focusing on strategy of the organization, and just maybe a little bit on business fundamentals. And then you get down here to the front line, frontline workers, supervisors, you're going to focus your goals, your time on the actual fundamentals. And then as you can see, the middle management supervisors, you get like a 60-40 split or 50-50 split. So this kind of helps your organization kind of get focused on where does their attention need to be. So obviously the frontline folks, us peons down here at the bottom, we don't need to be setting the strategy for the organization. We need to be figuring out, okay, how do we get this part out the door quicker? Or how do we fix this machine quicker? How do we get this machine up and running quicker? Or anything to do with the business fundamentals. So that's just a good graphic to kind of help people put things in perspective as what they should focus on. Okay, so moving on to competencies and behavioral skills. Now, you can list dozens on here, and I'm not here to tell you what your competency should be. At Progress Rail, we changed our competencies this past year, and we mirrored that with our values in action, which is along with Caterpillar, and that is integrity, excellence, which is quality, teamwork, commitment, and sustainability. So, and then we have one other element to that, which is servant leadership, which we've added for anyone who is a leader of others. So those are our competencies, and then, we got some detail behind that, but the emphasis I want to put on this is there are literally dozens and dozens of behavioral and competencies expectations that we have. So not just the performance piece of it, not just the SMART goals, all that's really good because you got to have performance, you got to have results, but you've also got to have people in your organization. They got to play well with others. They got to get along. They've got to have good people skills. They got to be punctual. Okay, they got to be reliable. They've got to have the right kind of attitude or the right kind of approach to their work. So having those, having those interpersonal skills, behavioral skills is just as important. Okay, most people that I know that have left a company, they don't leave the company, and I know you probably all know this better than me. They don't necessarily leave the company; they leave their boss. I'm sure a lot of you have heard some statistics. And I share one little statistic when I do supervisor training, but it's about 75% people leave their boss, not the company. So interpersonal skills, people skills, how we deal with other people is extremely important. And I have seen, and I experience it now with a couple of leaders in our own organization, where those leaders drive off a lot of people. Now their performance is really good, but they have a lot of turnover. Because they're micromanagers, they treat people ways they shouldn't. So the impact that you can have on an organization long term can be detrimental if you don't keep the behavioral skills and competencies, right there with the results and the SMART goals. So for me, it's 50-50 as far as I'm concerned. And I've often said the best operations managers are those who have 50% really strong technical skills and the other 50% is really good interpersonal skills. But again, dozens of other things you can talk about on here as far as time management, trustworthiness, emotional intelligence, and things of that nature. So again, these are just some thoughts, and the emphasis that I want to say here is, this should be just as equally important when you talk about evaluating people's performance. Okay, I want to end on this piece, and I added this because so many people want to wait till review time to give feedback, and it's really disheartening when a supervisor or managers waits to give negative feedback at review time. Hey, I got to get on to my employee. I got to give them a review, and I got to get on to them. Okay, it's not about getting on to them. They're not children. It's about giving them the right kind of feedback. Okay. Now, I personally think that giving feedback to employees, I think it's the #1 weakness among supervisors and managers. Now, that's just a personal opinion. No, nothing's, based on any kind of scientific study or anything. Just from my experience, I think most managers and supervisors are just terrible at providing performance feedback. A lot of them, they can't even do a good job at giving positive feedback. And that should come so easy, but it doesn't, let alone giving negative feedback. So I just encourage you all, to not let that be a weakness in your organization, among your leaders. And to me, I believe, to be a successful manager of other people, you have to be effective at providing constructive feedback. So when we talk about constructive feedback, there's two things. It's positive or it's negative, okay? And then, as I said earlier, I want to put some emphasis here on feedback and the specifics of the feedback. And as you can see here, it's really good to get some praise once in a while, right? We all enjoy a pat on the back. Hey, nice job, okay? Well, we know what we just did, so we know what they're referring to and we know what they're doing. But if you think about the power of feedback and then adding the specifics, how much more of an impact can that have on an individual? So for example, good job. That feels good. Hey, my boss said I did a great job. Okay, I feel pretty good about myself. But if my boss sits me down and says, look, hey, I want to give you some feedback. I want to tell you what a nice job you did on our project. I especially liked the presentation you put together. It was very professional. In fact, I'd like for you to show others on our staff how to put the special effects in a presentation like that. What do you think about that? Well, sure, yeah, I'll be glad to. Now I'm feeling pretty good. They want me to work with the rest of the staff. I know specifically what they're talking about and what they specifically think I did a good job at. So while it feels good to get a, hey, good job, pat on the back, but when you give the specifics about that feedback, it has so much more power to it, and it's going to have a bigger impact on me or any other individual who gets that kind of feedback. So that's the difference between praise and positive feedback, is the specifics, okay? And the same here. So the difference between criticism and negative feedback. So criticism, hey, you didn't do a good job. That was terrible. Okay, well, what was terrible about it? What was not good? So the employee is just left to wonder, okay, what was it about the job or the project that I didn't do a good job on? I thought it was okay. So when you give the negative feedback, and as you can read at the bottom there, if you really get good at negative feedback, and it can be taken as a gift. And so I do a lot of training with supervisors and managers in my line of work, and I really try to teach them to give that negative feedback and do it in a way that you're helping the individual. Okay, you're wanting them not to fail, you're wanting to help develop them, you're wanting to help them to get better and not repeat that mistake. Okay, so criticism looks like, hey, you didn't do a good job, that was terrible. Okay, no specifics, that's criticism. But when you give negative feedback, hey, I have some concerns about the work you did on our project. I noticed the presentation you put together was not thorough. It did not include an agenda as I requested, nor did it include all of the components of our project. Okay, so now I've got some specifics in there. Okay, I know what you're talking about now. Yes, I remember you telling me to do that. Yeah, I forgot or whatever. But now I know specifically what you're talking about. So now as a leader, you're going to talk about, okay, how do we prevent this from happening again? Okay, so what ideas do you have to improve upon this and for this to not happen again? But again, it's the power of the specifics and just having those feedback sessions along the way. All right, so that's really the end of my presentation, and I know that's really kind of a big, broad overview of performance evaluations. But I want to end on this note here, and this is a quote that I share a lot with people when I have the opportunity, and The quote is, "Nothing will kill a great employee faster than watching you tolerate a bad one." And I can't see everyone's reactions in here, but I guarantee you most everybody has probably witnessed this or experienced this somewhere along the way in their career. I know I have, from working as a welder in the hourly ranks, watching other welders get away with murder while I'm busting my butt, and my boss will let them get away with stuff. Does that have an effect on a good employee? It sure does. So I've experienced it as an hourly employee, but I've also seen it as a manager or HR professional, where I've had supervisors or managers, they don't address the problems. And this is part of what we're talking about, is feedback. So I've had dozens of supervisors in my career come up to me and say, "I want to get rid of so and so." Okay, well, why? Well, they're just terrible. They're sorry. I can't get them to work. Can't get them to do this. Can't do. They're just terrible. Okay. Well, have you sat down and talked with this person and given them this feedback? Well, no, not really. Okay. Well, are you going to do that? Yeah, I think so. Well, let's look at their personnel file, and let's see what their performance evaluations look like in the past. Well, what do you find there? It's a meets. It's all good, right? So there's nothing even in the performance evaluation, and not that it necessarily belongs in a performance evaluation, but there's nothing negative in there about their performance or their behavior or anything. So, you know, it's important to, when you evaluating people, it's not just once a year at performance review time. It is ongoing. And if people are not performing at the level that you expect, if they're not behaving the way you expect, they're not punctual, they're not on time, they're not starting their work on time, whatever it is, address it. Give them that feedback. Yeah, it's not hard. It just takes time and it takes effort. Now, I know a lot of managers and leaders thinks it's hard, but you got to really think about what's the negative effect that you're having on your good employees by not addressing and providing that feedback to those employees that are falling short of what your expectations are. I know, for example, and for myself, it is very disheartening. Even as a professional, I've seen it happen time and time again. And even when I was an hourly employee 30-something years ago, I saw it happen then. So in my entire career, I have seen it where my manager or my supervisor not hold other people accountable. They don't address the issues. So and that falls in line with, you know, providing that feedback. Okay, address those issues, address those concerns. Okay. All right, so that's all I have. I know I went through that really quick. I could talk about performance evaluations, and I've got tons and tons of stuff I could share with you. But I hope you got something out of today's presentation in regards to performance evaluations, SMART goals, or just feedback in general. So, thank you guys for having me. And if I can, I'd be glad to entertain any kind of questions or comments from anyone.
Good business feedback there. So we actually have a comment from Allison Casey. Allison's the HR manager for Gadsden Regional Medical Center. She said, "Great, thank you for sharing your experience and expertise." That. All right. If you guys have any questions or comments, put those in the chat right now if you'd like to. As far as, I know I had a question sent to me privately earlier about the recording. The recording will be located right there. There's the link for you guys to see, along with all other recorded webinars. If we don't have any questions, I don't see any questions just yet, we'll go to a few more seconds. I'll turn off the recording here in a second.
Well, if you want to share with them that, if anybody would like any information about SMART goals or, need anything from me, they can get in touch with me through you. I'll leave my business card with you, but feel free to share any of my information.
And Rodney just mentioned, if anyone's interested in contacting him to find out more information about SMART goals and how to help with that, you guys can email me, call me at the chamber. I have Rodney's information. He'll be happy to get with you on that. And we did have a question though from Mike Perkins. Mike asked, Rodney, what do you recommend for managers who sugarcoat evaluations?
Okay, that's a good question, Mike. I've seen that a lot, and I think the best advice I can give there, Mike, or to anybody is, just don't sugarcoat it, because you're not helping the individual. I think if there's something specific that you're having an issue with, whether it's their performance or their behavior, you really have to be specific about what it is that's an issue. If you're trying to sugarcoat it, now if you have some strategy behind sugarcoating something, you're trying to beef them up or trying a different angle or something, that might be a little bit different. But I think it's always important to be honest. I think when you sugarcoat things, you can lead that person to believe that they're doing a great job, and they're not. If it's their performance or behavior, sugarcoating it, you're basically saying, hey, everything's fine, and when indeed it may not be. So I think it's important to always be honest, and especially if you're responsible for people, you're accountable to them, and you're accountable to them as a leader to help them from failing. And if they fail, some of that may be on you as a leader, and it may be because of the way you've led them. So my thoughts is, Mike, is don't sugarcoat it, be honest, and if you do it in a way that's appropriate, it could be a gift to that person, because it could turn them around.
We just had another comment from Mike too, which is very wise. Yeah, Mike said one thing also to remember is that sugarcoated evals are sometimes used against the company when they have to let someone go and litigation follows. So that's something to think about as well.
Yeah, very good point, Mike. And that's kind of the point I was trying to make about performance reviews. When have a supervisor or manager says, hey, I want to get rid of so and so, you pull the reviews and it's all good, and then that's when I tell them, we can't get rid of this person because everything you said about them on paper is good. You've not done a PIP, you've not given them any negative feedback, you've not had those conversations. So good point.
As HR,
Oh yeah. I do a lot of role playing in my training. I think it's very effective in getting supervisors to role play, and really to when you start acting it out and having to deliver those tough messages and stuff, it puts them on the spot, but it's good practice. Okay.
Well, I don't see any more questions or comments in the chat section. Mike says, thanks, Rodney. Great job on the topic.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Well, if there are any more questions or comments, guys, you guys stay safe and take care. Again, you can find the recorded webinar later today on that link I posted in the chat a little while ago. Again, thank you to Mike Perkins and Frontline HR for sponsoring this year's Chamber Councils, and thank you this year's Chamber HR Councils. And thank you to Rodney for coming to speak to us today. I'm going to turn off the recording now.